Three of the fantasy football season. And here's a few tight ends I'd look to bench this week. The first guy, TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions. Hawkinson, so far, this Lion offense has been scoring a lot of points. 71 points in the first two games, but Hawkinson hasn't done anything. Week 1 versus Philly, 4 catches, 38 yards. And Week 2 versus the Commanders, 3 catches, 26 yards. So right here, Week 3, a decent matchup at the Minnesota Vikings. That Dallas Goedert had a pretty good ball game versus. But right here, I can't count on Hawkinson. He's not getting it going. And Amon St. Brown and DeAndre Swift are the two mainstays in this offense right now here for this Detroit Lion team. And he's also banged up a little bit with a little bit of a hip injury is TJ Hawkinson. So right now, with other guys doing work over there in Detroit, he's looked like he lost a step. He dropped a couple balls as well in that Week 2 matchup. And a couple tight ends have emerged over the last few weeks. Like a Gerald Everett, I'd rather play over him. A Zach Ertz, I'd rather play over him this week. And even a Irv Smith Jr., I think, has higher upside in this ball game than a Hawkinson. So right now, while he's done nothing the first 2 weeks, even though I know this Lion offense has put up points in a hurry here, I would bench Hawkinson until he shows something. The next tight end is Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. So Dawson Knox, a lot of people were big on him after coming off a good season last year, scoring 9 touchdowns. But so far this year, he hasn't done much. Week 1 at the Rams, 1 catch for 5 yards. And then Week 2 versus Tennessee, 4 catches for 41 yards. So right here, Week 3, not a great matchup in Miami. Miami versus tight ends has been decent over the last couple seasons, even though we saw Mark Andrews, obviously, who's one of the best tight ends in the league, have a good ball game in Week 2 versus the Dolphins. But right here, he's banged up as well with a foot injury. He didn't practice in Wednesday's practice, but obviously it's a short week. I still think Knox is going to play, but even if he does play, like I said, he's not a guy I'm going to count on after seeing what happened the first 2 weeks. And if Gabriel Davis comes back in this game, that's even less targets, in my opinion, for Knox. So right here, if you could get a different tight end on your roster, or just bench him in general for someone else, like an Everett or Ertz, a Fat Fearmouth, I would do that this week because I don't think he has a good game. And he's banged up with a foot injury, is Dawson Knox. And he's a tight end I would bench this week. And the third and final tight end I will bench this week here is Albert O. The Broncos. So Albert O, so far, 1 decent game and 1 bad game in the early going. And this Bronco offense, they're in a tailspin right now in the first 2 weeks of the season. I don't know what they're going to do. Wilson, he hasn't looked good with his new team. Maybe it's rapport. Maybe his best seasons are behind him. Who knows with Russell Wilson. But Albert O in Week 1, he had a good ball game for PPR leagues. 5 catches, 33 yards on 6 targets. And then Week 2, only 2 targets. So right here, he's a guy you can't trust. I know he had a lot of preseason hype around him as Albert O. But right now, Week 3, a tough matchup on Sunday Night Football versus San Francisco 49ers. And he's a guy that didn't get many targets in Week 2. And he's a guy that obviously him and Russell Wilson don't have a rapport yet. The only guy on this receiving corps or tight end corps that Wilson has a rapport with is Cortland Sutton. Everyone else hasn't done anything here so far. So Albert O, he's been dropped in tons of fantasy leagues over the last 2 weeks here, where he's only owned right now 49% of leagues. So right now, he's a guy with a get away from this week here, and a guy with bench. No doubt about it, he could turn things around and have a big game in the next couple weeks. But right here with a tough matchup and him and Russell Wilson not really connecting, he's a tight end I would bench this week. So that's a few tight ends I would bench here for Week 3 of the fantasy football season.